Hi, everyone, and welcome back to your weekly installment of the Reserve List Top 10. These are the hottest selling cards on the reserve list from November 9th to the 16th of 2024. There's a few unexpected surprises in today's video, so stick around because this party is just getting started. Hey guys, welcome back. This is your one-stop shop to find out what's going on the reserve list. I am MTG Moxman, and thanks again everyone for hanging out with me again today. So before we get today's video started, just a reminder, if you want to support my channel, and I know you do, don't forget to use my TCG Player affiliate link. It is found in the description of this video. Anything you purchased using my link, of course, goes back to the channel. Now let's start out at number 10. Kind of interesting. We're starting off at Weatherlight, and we're checking out Null Rod. Now, this is an interesting card because of what it does and the fact this card really hasn't dropped in price in the last few months. Now, this card comes in this week with a total sales volume of 30 sales, and of course that's in a 1 week period. Now the total price though is $2,864.40 if all the copies are near mint. Now I like to point out to you guys when these things are or are not near mint, and in this case most of these copies are. Now Null Rod is a 2 casting cost artifact that states players cannot play any artifact abilities requiring an activation cost. Now this slows down or just downright stops many different decks, and this thing sees a lot of play in Commander, so keep an eye on this card because the price isn't really going to drop, but there's no reason for it to surge forward either. Now the number 9 card this week again is coming to us from Weatherlight, a lot of underrated cards in this set. Now, ABance is only $8.75. This is not a tremendous amount of money, and the 32 copies that sold this week is $280 if they're all near mint. And in this case, no, they're not. They're heavily played, moderately played, light played, and near mint, which means really probably only about 180 to 200 bucks got spent. Now, what does that mean for this card? Well, let's find out why it's good. Now, for one white and one other, and the fact this thing is an instant, it says until end of turn. Target player cannot play instants, interrupts, sorceries, or abilities that require an activation cost, and you get to draw a card. So not only do you slow down that particular opponent, you're drawing a card because of it. I mean, back in the day, we would use this with things like Isochron Scepter and stuff. It was a lot of fun. So I can see why people may like to use this card, and I can see why this card is super cheap as well, because it doesn't fit a lot of deck construction ideas nowadays, but who knows where cards like this will go in the future. Now, the number 8 card this week is not even an official card technically. This is Grim Monolith, but of course, it's the World Championship Edition. Now, last week we saw City of Traders Championship Edition cards come on here, and the Grim Monolith had 38 sales this week. But remember, it's 25 bucks, and I can tell you right now, it's being bought for Commander. That's exactly where it fits in. Now, $950 of total sales volume for those 38 sales. That's like buying just like 4 regular ones. But in this case, you saw a lot more sales than that. Now, Grim Monolith, don't forget, is a 2 casting cost. It comes into play and does not untap during your untap phase. You can add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool, play this as a mana source, and you can pay 4 to untap it. So there's lots of infinite combos that make this thing go off like gangbusters, but this is a casual format that we talk about in Commander, which is why a lot of people are buying the championship editions right now. It looks like there's been a real surge in sales, so it's something to pay attention to because somebody out there is making a whole boatload of money off this stuff, and you might be one of those people that say, you know what, I'm just going to buy a copy of this. It's so much cheaper. Now, our number 7 card this week is, of course, Replenish, and this is from Urza's Destiny. Comes in at $93.48 on average. There was 40 sales this week, which is $3,739.20. Replenish is seeing, again, a lot of play in Commander. Let's not forget the Commander being the most popular format. Definitely draws in a big appetite from players who want to get their hands on a lot of cards. So what do we get for our card here? Well, for 1 white and 3 other, this beautiful, beautiful artwork that is a sorcery states to you return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to play. Now, the thing I like about this card is it does say all enchantments, and the idea we now have enchantment lands and stuff can lend a lot of versatility to a card like this over the long run and in certain builds. It's losing its popularity right now. We are seeing the price downtick, which means it's getting cheaper to buy. So if you're looking for this card, just wait another 3 or 4 months. You might be able to save about 25% off the price right now. So no reason to dive in and overpay when it's losing ground on the player base. Now we get into some very unusual cards. Our next card is from Revised. This is Savannah, and this, of course, is a dual land. It comes in with an average price of $324.95, but it had 42 sales this week. That's $13,649.58. Now, again, that's if they were all near mint, and in this case, it's running the gamut of everything from heavily played to even damaged, all the way through to BGS copies. Now, when I look at that, I see a large group of players all buying it for different reasons. But either way, it looks like the price kind of shaving off where it has, making it cheaper, has really got players going and buying copies for play, mainly for Commander. But I've also heard from people that, nope, I bought 4 copies because I want it for old school. And when they're this cheap, I'm going to buy them. Now, cheap being the relative term, because not everyone is going to think $300 and something is cheap. But to some players, yeah, it's worth buying them now while it's cost less. Now, our next card, again, we're diving into another reserve list dual land, and this is Scrubland. Scrubland takes the number 5 position with 43 sales, which is $13,286.56. So what's going on, guys? Dual lands have always been the gateway entry point for power cards. If you're getting dual lands, there is a reason. And when you look at these dual lands and the fact that a heavily played one, you can save almost 35 to 40% off the price, that's the ones that are selling mostly in the case of Scrubland. Heavily played to moderately played plus copies make it just much more affordable, especially if players are trading in other cards. And there's a whole bunch of cards being traded in to get to these cards. Not all of these are cash transactions. Keep that in mind. The sales are the sales, but there was different ways of getting those sales. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our next card, because now we're jumping over to, of course, if you could believe it, we're back at Homelands, guys. Didgeridoo. Didgeridoo is $16.10. It had 46 sales this week. That's $740.60, which is actually pretty significant for a set that most people have written off as one of the worst sets of all time. Now, why do you think Didgeridoo may be getting some sales? Well, we did see a few more Minotaurs show up. The Minotaurs showing up may not be the greatest ones, but it lets you know that they're still out there. Now, for a 1 casting cost and 3 to use it, it says take a Minotaur from your hand and put it directly into play, as though it were just summoned. Now, the idea that you may be able to go and get some vicious creature, turn 1, 2, or 3, depending on how you can put your deck together, this card could be insane in the future, and this is why players continually, they just keep specking on this card, and the cards selling are the near mint copies. People are going for the best of the best. It's not as if we're cracking Homelands anymore. Now, let's go ahead and take a look again, because we're not done with Homelands yet. This is Costan Falls. This card is exactly where it should be. $10.49 up to about $20 is where this card should be in home right now. 53 sales, which is $555.97. And the reason I tell you that this card actually should be here is because of what it does. Now, for 2 black and 2 other, this is an enchant world, but it does have a very unique and obviously awesome artwork. This card says, during your upkeep, tap target untapped creature you control or bury the falls. But no creature can attack unless its controller pays an additional 2 whenever that creature attacks. So token armies get rendered pretty much neutered. Okay, they can't do a lot if you keep having to tap mana just to keep them alive or to make them attack, and you stack this onto many other abilities, and you can take care of very large armies very quickly. For 10 to 20 bucks, this card's in a perfect price zone. Now, our next card is Underground Sea. This card comes in this week with 69 sales to take the number 2 spot. Let me explain here, guys. That's $54,140.85. The cards selling are anywhere from PSA to BGS, all the way through to damaged copies that are sleeve playable. That leaves a very large gamut of where the price of this card will be. Many stores are trying to accumulate more dual lands recently. I'll cover more of that in the wrap-up. But don't ever forget that if you own a dual land, you normally do not sell them unless something catastrophic has happened. People accumulate dual lands, and stores usually reap the benefit of when a collector decides to trade in their entire collection. And since that happens less and less nowadays, that makes them more and more expensive and harder to get your hands on them. So that was your number 2 card, but what comes in at number 1? And that is from Fallen Empires, and it's Rainbow Veil. This card had 92 sales this week, guys, and let's take a closer look. That 92 sales is $615.48. This card from Fallen Empires, it's one of those interesting cards because it's been as high as 20 bucks It's gone down to $2, but now it's hovering around the $6 mark because it actually sees play in Commander. Now, because it gets played in Commander, but not everywhere, it's recognized but not a glorified card. It taps to add any color to your mana pool, but Control of the Rainbow Veil passes to opponent at the end of turn. So you get to choose an opponent who gets it in a Commander game. But the idea of this card for me is that it can tap for any color, and if you can find a way to bounce it and get it back to yourself, well, that makes it even more powerful. Not to mention sacking it and bringing it back. But the fact that this card is so inexpensive kind of boggles my mind. But at the same time, let it be that way. It lets players still get the card at a very reasonable price. So there's the market as it stands for your top 10 cards. Now, those being the hottest selling cards, I have to make note and let you guys know what else is going on in the market space for Magic the Gathering. These championship edition decks with cards like Replenish and all the Urza's block cards, Gaia's Cradle, these cards are selling, and they're selling a lot. The thing is that they are so much cheaper than buying an original copy that players are still buying them. The Grim Monoliths, the City of Traders. Because I'm seeing these cards sell in the volumes that we see, I'm noting it down for you guys out there, because obviously Commander players who are casual really don't care. As long as it's a card made by Wizards of the Coast, they're deciding to buy that over creating a proxy copy. It's interesting to note, okay? It's just something to let you guys know, because these cards have started to show up more on my list, and the sales volumes I'm getting are higher than are anticipated in a weekly kind of installment. Same with the dual lands. Now, dual land volumes are not always going to show up on things like TCG Player. You guys out there need to be aware of this. Those kind of sales tracking volumes are not easily found. You have to have friends in Facebook groups. You've got to know who to ask, and you better have some good contacts with a lot of different stores who do under the table trades between other people. They say, oh, I'm going to trade in this amount of cards, I'll give you some cash, and you give me the dual lands. That kind of stuff happens quite a lot. You just got to have a good relationship with your owner and know what you're talking about when you're trading in cards. And the owner, of course, wants to flip these things as quick as possible, especially if they've bought a collection and got to make some of their money back. Thanks again for giving the info, guys. Very cool to see that many dual lands. Congratulations. Now, before I end off today's video, the fact we're starting to see power cards move as well is something to note. Seeing dual lands move, Bazaar Baghdad's, Library of Alexandria's, Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, seeing some of these cards move, even if they're lower volume, but just the kind of ticking back and forth, and seeing players trade in for modern cards that have risen in value, things like Shieldred. The fact these cards are 80, 90 bucks, and if somebody happened to have 4 or 5, you're well on your way to getting a heavily played piece of power. And some players trading up to these things, it's insane to think that you can do it, but you can. And that's where I see a lot of players making some bold moves, and it's kind of cool to see those photos you guys send me. I know you told me not to mention it, and I'm not mentioning any names, just saying that you did it, which is very cool. Guys, thank you again for hanging out with me on my channel today. Hope you guys found the video fun and informative. These were your top 10 selling cards. No, there's no Silk Devi on the list. I wish there was, but it just didn't happen this week. Guys, thanks again. I'll see you guys on the live stream, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Have an awesome day. Here we are at the end of the video, sending out the big thank yous to all the fantastic patrons of my channel. Whether you're a patron or a YouTube membership member, you've had a hand in the creation of the content here on the channel, because you're helping make it happen by being supporters of my channel. So thank you again, guys out there, for supporting each and every day. And to all my patrons and YouTube membership members, I will see you tomorrow, of course, with another video. I know. Okay. Ramble Jamble. 2 Collector Edition Black Lotuses. 1 heavily played Black Lotus. 1 Ancestral Recall. 1 Mox Ruby. 1 Mox Emerald. Heavily played. 1 Mox Pearl. Damaged but sleeve playable. By the way, that went for like $1,000 US. Very cool. I got a sneeze coming. Okay. 2 Gaia's Cradles. 4 Sarah's Sanctums. We've got multiple other dual lands that didn't make the list, like 4 or 5 Volcanics. These are things to note, guys. Some of the movement we're seeing on the market is interesting. Now, the stores give me some of the info. People send me receipts and stuff showing me what they've been purchasing. The idea as well that some of these cards are just, players believe they're unobtainable. But when they look at their collections, and if a store happens to have something on a shelf that they can't move, and you trade in enough stuff and add $300-400 cash, before you know it, you own a Mox, that's insane. But it happens. and it's happening more often as some of the card prices tick up. Now, I did a personal short yesterday talking about Sink into Stupor. It was an uncommon, Modern Horizons 3. Now, the funny thing about that card is if somebody trades in 50, 60 copies, look at how much money gets made, especially if they didn't need it. And then they go ahead and they trade that into something bigger. And then they trade that into something bigger. They work their way up. That whole thing of the guy going from an eraser to like a pencil case, and he keeps jumping around until he gets to a house. Okay, I'm not saying we're going to go that far, but with Magic cards, when prices go up and you sell into that, but you take trade in, which gives you a lot more value, you get to build up into something pretty impressive. So thanks again, guys, for being here. Very crazy, cool stuff going on, and very unexpected sales volumes for this time of year again. I keep saying this, but it's so true. So I'll see you guys soon. Have an awesome day. Ramble. Jamble.